also known as CenComm, and I'm delighted to have you join us today on the inaugural session of the CenComm Connect webinar series. And I thank you very much for taking the time and trouble and interest to be with us today. It's my job to actually introduce this afternoon's speaker, but before I do that, I'd like to give you a little background on CenComm, the Center for Management Communication here at IIM Bangalore. We were established with a view to actually support and enhance all aspects of management communication, and we focus on three primary audiences: students, practitioners, and teachers. As such, we are putting together communities in each one of these areas, and we will be rolling out other programs in addition to the CenComm Connect webinar series. We will be rolling out other initiatives which we believe will be of interest and use to you and will help all of you work on improving your communication skills in the management area. So I really appreciate your supporting us and participating in today's event. Our speaker this afternoon is Professor Rakesh Godwani, and the topic of his webinar is LinkedIn, Bloopers and Blunders. Dr. Godwani is a well-known figure in the area of management communication. He has written 4 books in the area. He has been teaching at various IIMs for close on 1 decade now, and is probably one of the best people to tell us about how we as LinkedIn users could actually get to know about best practices in using the LinkedIn facility and put those best practices to use in improving the way we position ourselves and communicate with others on the platform. Equally importantly, Dr. Godwani is going to tell us about what we shouldn't be doing, and hence the title, LinkedIn, Bloopers and Blunders. However, his speech, as I understand it, will actually give you wide insight into how you could be more effective on LinkedIn and thereby increase the chances of your connecting with other professionals, with potential employers, and other people whom you'd like to follow. With that brief introduction, I'd now like to turn over the podium to Professor Godwani and request him to tell us about LinkedIn, Bloopers and Blunders. Have a great afternoon, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Bringy. That was a very kind introduction. I am so delighted that we all were able to get this thing together, and special thanks to you and Anushi from the IIMB CenComm. Before I start, I'd also just like to make sure that I'm being heard. So if some of you can just send me a chat message to tell me if my audio is clear, I will be very grateful, and I'll wait for about 10 seconds for the responses. Excellent. And can I also request all the members on the webinar to just take a look on your screen. You should be able to see my presentation. So please let me know if you are able to see my presentation now. Okay, excellent. So the reason I thought we will talk about this topic was that the whole idea of creating the IIM Bangalore Center of Communication was to also look at topics that are very commonly used in our lives and understand them from a communication perspective. And I believe LinkedIn is one such platform that all of us have in the professional capacity. We want to have a better job, and we use this platform quite extensively so that we can network and become a little better. But I felt, and after teaching communication for over 7 years at IIM Bangalore, I felt that there is very little that is available out there to understand what a good LinkedIn profile could be. And I'm in no ways an expert, so I'm going to apply an academic hat to explain what LinkedIn profile should be, what are the do's and don'ts that one can keep in mind to create a good profile, and how can one benefit in their professional career from having a good profile. So with that said, I'd like you all to go to slide number 2, which should come on your screen right now. One of my favorite movies is called Sleepless in Seattle. And this picture that you're able to see right now is about the main protagonist, Sam, and his son, Jonah, standing on the right of this image, looking at Meg Ryan, who plays the role of Annie. And it's a marvelous story. The story is about how Jonah and Sam had lost his wife, Jonah had lost his mom, and they're very sad. And one night, Jonah just calls the radio station, and the program is called Sleepless in Seattle. And the host of that radio talk show talks to Sam and asks a question that, did you love your wife? Do you miss her? And Sam doesn't know it, but at the same time, there are millions of people listening to this show, and many of them are hooked by Sam's touching story. And one of that listener that night was Annie, who was driving her car in Baltimore, which is thousands of miles away from Seattle. And in the end, the radio host requests everyone that, hey, Jonah needs a mother and Sam needs a wife. So if you're interested, here is Sam's address, write to him. And the next day, Sam gets thousands and thousands of letters. Now, in these thousands and thousands of letters, Jonah finds one letter which has been written by Annie. And he feels that she's the right person for his father and the right person for him as his mom, and actually goes out to Seattle to meet her, actually goes out to Baltimore to meet her. And the point I'm trying to make is that what is this particular movie doing in our webinar? Why are we talking about a romantic comedy in our webinar? And the answer is that I think if Annie wouldn't have written this letter, which had some magic in it, Jonah wouldn't have noticed it, and he wouldn't have met Sam. And that is the key message I would like to talk about, that all of you have your LinkedIn profiles, all of you have your intentions to get a particular career. But I think there must be something magical in your profiles that should capture the attention of the person you want to have your profile get noticed from. And that is, I think, a tremendous amount of effort of writing. So to summarize why I chose to start this webinar with this romantic comedy movie was, I think there is a little bit of reflective thought in writing something so powerfully that it gets noticed by someone you want to get noticed from. And that's how your life changes. And I think LinkedIn is that particular platform where if you have a magical profile which has the right words that capture the attention of audiences, I think your career will take a very good trajectory. The next slide talks about a very interesting story from history, that even Leonardo da Vinci, I mean, we know him as a genius, but even Da Vinci had to write a letter to the Duke of Milan for employment, and that entire concept now we call very popularly as a CV or a resume. And this entire CV and resume is very nicely explained in this website link which I have put below. The summary of this letter is as follows, that Da Vinci wrote this letter to the Duke of Milan in which he highlighted his abilities. Now, we all know him as a great painter because of Mona Lisa, but very few of us actually know that Da Vinci was not only a painter, he was also a sculptor, an engineer par excellence, a maker, an inventor. And in this letter, he had written down point by point what areas he can help the Duke and why the Duke should consider hiring him. And if you think about this from a very different perspective, I think it's a very enlightening view of a curriculum vitae or a resume, that the Duke of Milan had some needs. Like, for example, he had needs of going to wars, and in those wars, he needed bridges. And Da Vinci actually wrote in this letter that I can help you make those bridges. I can help you make aqueducts because you need water. I can help you make machines for wars. And by the way, I can also paint and do lots of things artistic, which I can do for you and your palace. And I think this is an essential element that I always request my students to start thinking about, that the whole idea of creating your profile for a professional job or a networking opportunity is to highlight what you can do for the other person, just like how Da Vinci highlighted what he can do for the Duke. And he thought about the Duke's needs very clearly, which is what you need to also start doing. And this process of writing a letter doesn't happen in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I, I probably am forced to think that Da Vinci would have spent few hours, if not few days, to type this down. And he would have thought through what the Duke of Milan wants. And he would have written those sentences so that the Duke of Milan is actually benefiting from this candidature, and he hires him as compared to others who would also apply for the job. And in this whole job market area, please remember, there are thousands of applicants who have pretty much the same profile points that you also have. And you have to start thinking, what can I do to make my profile stand out? Because if my profile stands out, only then I will get a chance to go and interview or get a chance to network. And this takes a tremendous amount of thinking. It's not very difficult, but I think it requires some thinking, and that's what I will spend some time in the next 20 minutes to demystify to all of you. Moving on. Everyone is searching for the right professional match to benefit from. If you look at our lives, especially from a business and managerial perspective, we are constantly searching for a way to live a better life. We want better opportunities, we want a better career, we want more money, we want a better car, a better house. We constantly try and make our lives better. And in this entire business corporate world, we always look out for finding that next professional match who we can benefit from. If we have a group that we are running, we want to hire the right person. If we are an entrepreneur, we want the right co-founders. If I'm an investor, I want the right person. So basically, the whole idea is that we are always looking out for finding the right people. And this is where your LinkedIn profile is very important to pitch yourself as that right person. To look at it from a different perspective, here's a simple game my little son and daughters used to play when they were young. There is this wooden board which has lots and lots of shapes. And the game is all about having the child fit the right shapes in these little areas. And you cannot fit a square in a star. You cannot fit a rectangle in a pentagon. So there has to be a fitment exercise. And if you look at hiring and the whole process of interviews, we are trying to find that right person that fits our requirement. And that is a very advanced stage of the whole job process. But the first step is that your LinkedIn profile should be so powerful that somebody gets attracted to you and starts to call you so that you can proceed in the process of getting a better job. So basically, a LinkedIn profile should be a profile that makes people connect with you. And when they read this profile, they should feel like reaching out to you. And an ideal LinkedIn profile should have these three things. The first one is expertise, because we are living in a professional and a managerial context, and LinkedIn is probably a very powerful tool for professional networking. So your expertise is a very important part for people to search you out for. That what kind of expertise do you bring on the table? What can you do for us? So that is a very big part of the profile. The second is your accomplishments. It's not enough to just have expertise. You should have also accomplished something. And that's where your track record and where you have worked earlier, whether you have gotten some tangible examples to say that this is what I've done in my accomplishments, they come in. And finally, LinkedIn is not just about jobs. It's also about people networking with each other, where you have to go beyond your job, which is into your personality, and talk about things that you are capable of beyond the office. These could be not just your hobbies, these could be things that you are working as a voluntary purpose. It could be your interests. It could be things that are your passion. It may not be necessarily connected to your jobs. But overall, a peek inside your personality is also very important, because after all, I always believe that you are not just hiring my expertise, you're hiring the entire person. And my behavior and my personality is a part of my whole package. So unless I also project that to my advantage, I think it won't be enough for the other people to notice me. But knowing all of these simple tips and techniques, I think we make terrible bloopers and blunders. I'll call them B and B from now on. That I think it's not a rocket science. It's a fairly simple, a fairly well-known thing that has been going on for centuries. If you look at Da Vinci, he did it centuries ago, and we are in the 21st century. We just now have to apply our common sense, learn from what are these bloopers and blunders, and avoid them from our own LinkedIn profiles. So here are some of the bloopers and blunders, or BNB, that I have collated to share with all of you. And my intention is not to harm anyone's intentions or put somebody in a portion where they're uncomfortable. All I'm trying to do is just share with you what could be a blunder when you can avoid it. So BNB number one. Many of us actually think that LinkedIn is our online resume. And I think that is not the right attitude. We just take our resumes and we slap it on LinkedIn. I have read many LinkedIn profiles, and I won't be surprised that their resumes and their profiles will have a 90% match. The 10% difference could be very minor things like a profile or a recommendation. But basically, people just take sections from their resume and slap it on LinkedIn sections, and that's not the right approach. And there are 4 or 5 reasons why that's not true. The difference is that a resume is very specific for a job. It's like targeted to apply for a job. But LinkedIn really is not. LinkedIn is very broad based. You really don't know what kind of a person will come, and it's catering to a large segment of an audience, also like a sector that you're part of, or a country you're a part of, or a culture you're a part of. So it's not targeting one person who is hiring for one position. You are trying to cater to a large variety of people, which is why the first thing you must understand is a resume is tailored for a job. LinkedIn profile is not. LinkedIn profile is a lot more broader, and it should be like that. Second big difference between a resume and a LinkedIn is that a resume is usually very brief. Unless you have done really so many things in your life that you have a 25-page resume, ideally a resume is 1 or 2 pages. There are many good examples on the internet that I saw that even the top CEOs of the world have put their resumes and profiles in 1 page. So I don't see why we need 4 pages to document our resume. So resume should be brief, and the LinkedIn profile essentially are very detailed because it's your profile, you control it, and this is where you can do storytelling, which you can't do in resumes beyond the point. So LinkedIn can be more detailed. Number 3, LinkedIn can have recommendations to back your claims, but resumes don't. And what I mean by that is that in a resume, you might have written a very simple point that I have brought in business worth 100 crores. You really don't have space to write a recommendation from your customer, or you can't let somebody back you up on that point. They will ask you in the interview. But in a LinkedIn profile, you can write a wonderful detail of what you've done, And you can even have a customer or a vice president of a company saying that, yes, Rakesh had gotten 100 crores from us, and here's a recommendation point. So that power is very strong in LinkedIn, which is not there in resumes. And finally, resumes are slightly straight-jacketed. You really can't have much fun in them. Though I encourage you to, I feel that it's a topic that requires a separate academic debate. In our classes, I get a lot of questions that should be formal or informal, and I feel that the answer to that question is not from academics; it's from reality of life, and depends on the kind of companies you apply for. And my suggestion is, in a resume, there is a very limited scope of being a little bit informal and having fun. But on LinkedIn, it's your profile, so you can really be very informal and have fun, because there is really no penalty you're going to get. In the worst case, somebody won't come to your profile and you won't even know. So feel free to have more fun on LinkedIn profiles as compared to resumes. So to summarize this particular slide, there are 4 or 5 differences between a resume and LinkedIn. And my only request to you is, LinkedIn profile is not your online resume. So don't take your online resume and slap it on the LinkedIn. It's much, much more than that. BNB number 2. Many of us confuse the professional aspect of networking to a social aspect of networking. And you also would have seen many of your friends and colleagues' profile pictures and elements in that profile very personal. Like, for example, here is something I took from a web article on what you should not do. And this picture is not mine. I've taken it from a website, and I can share that link with you. Here is a person who has kept 2 cans of beer on his cheeks. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But the question you might want to ask is, are you portraying your social life, or are you portraying your professional life? Now, if this gentleman works for this beer company, I think maybe that's a great idea. But I have a feeling that you're mixing 2 concepts here. That one is your social life and your your friendships and party elements on weekends. Ask yourself, does the world really want to know on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is more suited for a professional networking area, and I would request you that these kind of bloopers are avoidable, that try and keep 2 separate profiles. Like, I do a little bit of work on both my platforms, which is Facebook and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I try and keep as connected to my profession as possible. Facebook is a little bit more general. I even post things which are related to my family, which probably I'll never do on LinkedIn. So please don't mistake that LinkedIn is one more social media. I think it is definitely a social media, but it is more better suited for a professional scenario. BNB number 3. Try and use your photographs slightly differently. Please don't use mugshots that you have used in your passport many, many years ago and slap it on your LinkedIn profile. Here are 2 such examples. One is maybe a photograph you have given in your driver's license or maybe in your passport. Or second, maybe a photograph which is very scary. And here's a funny example of that. So please look at your profile photos and ask yourself, are you scaring someone, or are you conveying that I'm standing in front of a camera, or am I a leader? And the first thing people notice on a profile is the photo. So please look at your photographs. I can bet you that even I had these problems, that it's not easy for me to have a better photo. But I think I was taught this lesson. I was given a crash course on executive presence. And then I realized the wonder of having a good profile photo. So I encourage you all to relook at your profile photos and avoid putting your passport and DMV photos out there. BNB number 4, this is my favorite. This is where I think many of us will have a little bit of trouble as well. When I look at the designation lines of many of the LinkedIn profiles around me, I find here are some of the common areas that they try and force fit lots of things in the designation. They try and put their education, they'll try and put their company name, they'll try and put an expertise, there will be some jargon, there would be a last job name, there would even be a motivational quote, and pardon my pun, there would be a lot of BS in this. And I sometimes wonder that why would somebody need to work so hard to convey what he really does? Is it insecurity that you want to put everything in the designation, or is it that you want to have a wide range of recruiters come and talk to you? So I went and spoke to some of my recruiter friends and I asked them that, hey, would you like somebody to put all their information in their designation? What is it that you look for? And they had some answers which I'll share with you later, but I can tell you that I think these things make you look funny, if not likable. That if you have studied in good schools and have worked in great companies, and if you have a motivational quote, I think these are three separate things. So try and avoid putting them into your designation and make it very funny. Here are some of my favorite ones. Most of the students will be very proud in putting their institute names, that I'm from IIA, B, C, D, all the way to Z these days, and I'm a grad from that. And then they'll also put their undergrad school there. They'll put their school name if it's a very popular school. They'll put their company names if it's a very popular company. And I think these things are very commonly seen. The second funny one which I've seen is called chief instigator, and I don't understand what a chief instigator is. What are you trying to instigate? A riot? The third one is very commonly seen. I'm a seasoned sales professional, and I always wonder, what did you season yourself with? Oregano, or is it some other spice? And sometimes there are these weird motivational comments that I'm a passionate individual. And I find these comments very funny, that passionate individual can be treated both negatively or positively. So avoid these things. Then there are some other funny things, marketing ninja, leadership guru, and all these funny things. So there are these strange things we try and put on our designation, and I don't know why we put them. Are we trying to tell the world how good we are, or are we trying to tell the world that I'm really not sure what I am? VNB number 5. Many of us, and this is my probably last one or two bloopers and blunders before I get into the framework part. I think we all do not put time and do not invest in making a good profile. LinkedIn is actually a snapshot of your life's journey. And one of the best things I learned when I was working at Intel, and I had a very good boss called Greg Crane. One of the things he taught me was that, Rakesh, you should spend at least 1 hour a month just sitting down to document what you accomplished in that month. And I have never forgotten that lesson. In fact, I nowadays sometimes even spend more than 1 hour looking at what I've done in 1 month of my life, and try and document that into your journeys, because this is a great place to document your journey, not only for the others, but for yourself to see where your career trajectory is taking shape. So please don't wake up and polish your LinkedIn profile when you are changing your jobs or when you're exiting college. Spend time on it now and start investing few minutes a week, if not 1 hour a week, just to see what you have done and add it and see if it comes out professionally. I think the blooper here is that we wake up when we either have lost a job or are about to lose a job, or we probably know that we need to have a good LinkedIn profile to get called. And I think it's too late to do these things. You can't just make a LinkedIn profile in 1 hour, apply it, and expect people to come and network with you. It takes a tremendous amount of time. Now, looking at all these bloopers and blunders, I think that's why our profiles look very bad. That here is some of the feedback recruiters say in some of the researches that I was able to find out, that most recruiters say that, I only find candidates putting their work related information. I don't really see anything about their personality on and who they are. Second is, many of the profiles are very outdated, and I have done a check on this myself on many of my students. Many of my students' profiles actually have information which is at least 1 year old, and they should spend time in updating it. And probably the reason they haven't done it is that they already have a job. So the motivation to work on LinkedIn is very, very low, which is fairly understandable. But one thing we don't realize is that the world out there is still looking at our profiles. So if they find the outdated information, they only question our credibility, which can be counterproductive for our lives. Third, many of the profiles are very incoherent. There is something to do with your expertise in the middle, something to do with your passion on working with children in the front, and something to do with your education somewhere not even found on the profile. So it has to be coherent. It has to have a consistency that here is what I feel I am. All the parts of that profile should match each other, and the reader should find some coherency in that profile. Otherwise, they get confused, and it's a different problem. Then there are many terrible headlines and profile pictures that I shared with you, some examples, and lots of jargon that only the person who created the content and the profile understands. Sometimes we use the acronym of our companies that I work with, DBG Group, and I sometimes wonder that what does DBG Group even mean? And even if you explain it, many people on the world may not understand what that means. So you have to use jargon that the world understands. Now here is the secret sauce of this webinar, that we now know what are the mistakes we all make, me included. I've made tons of mistakes, and even now I think my profile has a lot of mistakes. But here are some elements that you can all use to have a better LinkedIn profile. Here is a simple framework. And if you look at this circle, there are 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll go through point 1 to point 5. Let's look at point number 1. The first thing I think your profile should convey is what problem can you solve? And I'll explain this in a very nice video that James Khan had on YouTube, and I show it in many of my classes, that if there is a job in the company, it means that there is a problem in a company. Otherwise, why would that job be even there? So let's say there's a sales position. That means that there is a problem in sales. And you, if you're applying for that job, have to prove that you are capable of solving that problem. So the first thing you must understand is that your LinkedIn profile should convey to the reader what problem can you solve for him or the world. And we'll understand this in a few minutes from now. Stay with me on these points of the framework. So the first point is, what problem can you solve? The second is, what do you want the world to see you as? And this is where the pictures of your profile and other elements come in very handy. Do you want the world to see you as a person who is standing straight in front of the camera and not smiling? Or do you want the world to see you as a rock star with a guitar? Or do you want this world to see you as a trekker climbing a mountain? You have to decide. But I think your profile picture conveys a lot of meaning, and you have to really decide what do you want the world to see you as. Third, how would you describe yourself in 2 minutes? So let's say you are traveling in a plane. The flight is 2 hours long, and there's a person next to you who asks you the question that, who are you? What would you tell him? And let's say this person is a very powerful, rich, and a successful entrepreneur, and you really would like to work for him. How would you pitch yourself to this person in 2 minutes? He has no clue who you are. He's asked the golden question, and you have a chance of 2 minutes to summarize everything to do that. So think about these 2 minutes, and that's where your profile summary can be very important. The fourth one is one of my favorites. Again, something that I was taught in my corporate world, that we do a lot of work and we try and document that in our resumes and our profile. But I think you must apply these lines in your resume and your profile to a test I call the so what test. And the so what test will help you make a better section in your profile, because it only helps you to take your mind away from what you have done to what you have accomplished. And the more you think about your accomplishments as defined by the so what test, I think your profiles will become a lot more powerful. And the final is, you need to walk the talk, that on a LinkedIn profile, there are lots of ways and means that you can share articles and posts, but I request that these articles and posts should be connected to the point number 1, which is what problem can you solve? So if you take a look at these 5 points, point number 1 is the problem that you can solve is your designation. Point number 2 is your profile pic. Point number 3 is the summary section of your LinkedIn profile. Point number 4 is the sections of the profile that you can populate. And point number 5 is all the activities you can do on LinkedIn which are coherent and connected to the designation or your profile. So this is how I will take the next few slides and explain these things to you one by one. And I also encourage you that by now you should have some questions, and if you do, please chat with the host, and Anushi, who's the host of the webinar, will collect your questions and we will start discussing them in about 10 more minutes time. So start shooting your questions, we'll collect them and we'll pick few which we can cover before we end. The next slide, I'll talk to you about how you can make your first 3 points, which is the designation, the picture, and the summary, look very coherent. And one of my favorite websites that has done this very well is Khan Academy. And I've taken one picture from Khan Academy. This person is called Cam. And if you look at his designation and photograph and his summary, it's a very simple, but it looks very coherent. His designation is that he's the math content manager. And if you read the content, it's absolutely delicious. Here's what it says. It says, once upon a time, Cam was stranded on an island with Justin and a pirate puzzle master named Toma. Toma lined up 100 treasure chests in a cave, labeled 100 coconuts from 1 to 100, and placed 1 coconut in each chest. Toma then led Justin into the cave and allowed him to look inside the chests and even swap the contents of 2 of them. And then there is a whole story below that I encourage you to read on the website. But basically, this story connects with the designation that there is some math element in this. And he's a content manager of math, so maybe he's helping the YouTube videos of Khan Academy which are on math, and he uses puzzles in that. And the picture also is of a person who's smiling, looks like a person who probably likes math and is a geek, and so on and so forth. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that what we do on LinkedIn is exactly the opposite. Our designations are just titles. They really don't convey anything else. I'm a business analyst. I'm a vice president. I am a professor. And sometimes we need to look at these things carefully that, all right, you might be a business analyst or a professor or a vice president, but what do you really do? What problem are you trying to solve? And I think when I look at Cam's designation, which is Math Content Manager, I'm able to see something about him more than just the designation. Maybe his designation is Senior Engineer or a Senior Content Developer, but he has decided not to use a Senior Content Developer. He decides to say that I'm a Math Content Manager, and that's much more likable for people because they understand what you're trying to do, because it conveys what problem you're trying to solve. So look at your own designations. If you've thrown a vice president there, you might want to rethink again it. I'm not saying that you should not use vice president. All I'm requesting is, can you also think about a problem you're trying to solve for the world and for your recruiters? And I think then the designation becomes a lot better. The second one is the so what test that we talked about. And when you read profile sections of many profiles around us, you might find sentences. So what you should do is read that sentence and throw that sentence on this word called so what. So here are some examples. I manage a team of 200 people. Ask yourself, so what? I have been a senior manager for 8 years. So what? I have graduated from this awesome school ZBX. So what? I think the whole idea of so what is to take your mind to a more important point, which is what's the impact of your work? Why would the world take you very seriously just because you have graduated from ZBX or you've been a manager of 8 years? You must have done something and you must bring that out. So if I were you, I would change this sentence, which is manager for 8 years, to a sentence that says, in last 8 years, I have doubled revenue, I have reduced costs to something, or I have hired 3,000 people. Now that's some impact. I've managed a team of 200 people. I will change that to some other sentence that also tells about the impact of your work with those 200 people. I've graduated from a school. I would change that to that I've published a case study with this professor of my school, and that's an impact. So look at your sentences Avoid writing a sentence which does not have an impact, because that's what you should convey. But at the end of the day, we are trying to find a candidate who fits my role. And if you don't bring out the impact, the reader or the person looking at your profile has no way to judge these things. And the more you think about impacts, the better it is for them. And the final few slides, which is walk the talk, that at some point of time, if you are a math content manager, but if your profile has all information about some other topic which is not connected to math content manager, let's say it's about some other concepts like, for lack of a better example, lawn tennis. And if you have written a blog on lawn tennis, if you are doing lawn tennis all the time, there is just no coherence between your math content manager skills and your other things. So please walk the talk, share your views with the world on the problem that you can solve. Like for example, if you are, one more example about how walk the talk can work against with you is that you are a person working in a bank. But if you're going to write a blog about how capitalism is bad for the world, it might just confuse your profiles. I'm not saying you should not write such blogs. I think we all should question our own environments. It's just that you need to make things a little bit more coherent. So write blogs and articles and posts that let the world see that you are somehow connected to point number one, which is the main problem that you're trying to solve. Now, when someone like Robert De Niro, and this is a great movie, I'm sure you would have all watched, it's called The Intern. Intern is about this lovely story about a 70-year-old retired vice president, Robert De Niro, who works with a 25 or a 30-year-old young CEO of a startup in the online space, Anne Hathaway. Now, if Robert De Niro says that I'm dependable, operational, then I think you might believe him because he looks like that as well. And plus, there's 70 years. But if you're 20 and 30 years and then you are writing sentences like that, that I'm dependable, you need to justify that with examples. The point I'm trying to make is that you need to probably have some backing material for your claims. And that's where LinkedIn is the best. So my request to you is, if you have worked with someone, please get some recommendations with them. If you have won a client, please request the client to say a few words about you. And this is very serious, and don't do it just for the heck of doing it. This is the art of networking, that if you're asking someone for some recommendation, it's a great honor. And don't take recommendations from your best friends or people who are in your own organizations at the same level, because the world can notice that these are not recommendations, these are just points that you have used to fill up your profile, and they don't look very good. So these recommendations have to be very, very thought through, and it's almost like a cherry on the cake. So please treat them very, very carefully. And here is a case study that one of my students of the current PGPA program that I'm teaching right now, Saurav Dey was kind enough to let me use his profile. He became my scapegoat, so I'm very thankful to him. So Saurav met me one day and shared me this profile. So this was his old profile that we worked on. And I then gave the framework to him in my classes. And I'll show you the revised LinkedIn profile. So if you look at this LinkedIn profile, it looks very empty. There is a background image which is like a galaxy. Saurav's picture is nice, but it probably conveys, probably has no such information that connects with the kind of work he does. And then it's a role in a bank, which is product manager at Deutsche Bank. And then there is a mention of Deutsche Bank again, in the Institute of Management. And then he has written a simple sentence, which is, I build products that solve complex problems with simple solutions and provide value to a large user base. And there are these contact points. So I asked sort of a lot of questions. We discussed a lot, and I gave him some suggestions. And he really applied them and sent me this revised LinkedIn profile, which I'll share with you right now. So this is the Saurav's profile, old one. What I'm going to show you now is Saurav's profile, the new one, and here it comes. So if you look at this new profile, it's first of all a lot more there's a lot more content. And if you look at this one by one, first of all, there's a picture that conveys Saurav in a tie and a jacket. And now there is some connectedness with the kind of work he's done, that it looks like he's a manager, and probably he wants to convey that he is a well-suited manager in a senior role, and that is captured very well. The designation now says builds digital products, because that's the kind of work he wants to position himself in. And it's no more a designation, it is now trying to solve a problem for someone. That if I have a company like Myntra or Amazon or a bank which has a website or an app, I think Saurav is a great guy who builds digital products, and he might be a great fit. So it does solve a problem for someone. And he also talks about that he's a professional trekker. So in his profile picture, you see this lovely picture of mountains and a young girl waving at him, which I think he took when he was trekking. And he's also a runner. So now there is a little bit of character in Saurav's profile, that he's not just a person working in Deutsche Bank. He's also a person, he's into mountaineering and high altitude climbing and running and so forth. Then in the summary, there are these 2 or 3 paragraphs that capture his expertise, accomplishments, and personality. And I'll just read the first paragraph for you. Saurav is an engineer by education, but his heart is with building and marketing digital products. He's currently a management student at IIM Bangalore, a top B school of Central Asia in the garden city of Bangalore, and is working for Deutsche Bank. At Deutsche's investment banking tech division, he's managing a product because of which 100,000 users can access different bank applications with appropriate access control every day. So not only this paragraph is a little bit more deeper to tell what Saurav is, it also has an impact that because of his work, there are 100,000 users who are accessing the work. And there are lots of things we can still do to improve this profile. But the point I'm trying to make is that from the profile's earlier avatar, this profile is a lot more likable and will generate a lot more traffic on his profile as compared to the last time. And this didn't take Saurav lots of months. It probably took him few hours of effort. And I know it for a fact because this happened in my course that is running. So within about 4 or 5 weeks, this entire episode happened, and I took his permission to discuss this with you. So what should you learn from this? And now I'll stop and we'll take your questions in a few minutes. So let me summarize that LinkedIn is an extremely powerful tool for you to get noticed for a better future. It is not an online resume. It is a lot more than that. It takes a lot of time and effort, which should be continuous, not like you just wake up one day and invest 4 hours on it and forget for 4 years. I think you should invest 1 hour a month on your LinkedIn profiles and keep documenting it, because it's going to get better and better. And the last is, if you're not getting found by people, then I think the only possible solution is that you need to start tuning your LinkedIn profile right now. So with that, I will probably stop the presentation. I will now request Anushi to ask me some questions that you have sent her, and then we'll take them one by one. Anushi, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Anushi, I can hear you.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Rakesh, for sharing great insights on a good LinkedIn profile. Taking some of the questions. The first one is, any tips on the language and tone of LinkedIn posts?
So language and tone, is that the question, Anushi?
Yes. Language and tone for LinkedIn posts.
Okay, so I'm just probably going deeper in the question myself. I think LinkedIn has an option for you to be as informal as possible, because as I said, that resumes become very straight-jacketed and there is very little scope to do some informal things. So the tone can be very informal. You can choose to use both first person and third person. I have seen many people using first person. Some people also use third person. That's also fine. So there are no rules. That's the beauty of LinkedIn. You can actually make it whatever you'd like. But my request is that please use a style which is more storytelling style. Feel free to use first person languages like I did this, I was there with my client, this is what I learned. And it can be as informal. It's almost like you talking to a friend and having a conversation. Because in the internet world, the attention span of audiences are so low that your tone can make attentions go high.
Thank you, Professor Rakesh. The next question is how to tell people that I'm good in public speaking through my profile. Can my first paragraph be a summary of accomplishments or should it be like a story?
So say that again, Anushi. I got confused with the public speaking part and the other part.
The participant is good in public speaking, and
Okay.
how can she share that through her profile? Can her first paragraph, which is the profile summary, be a summary of accomplishments or should it be like a story?
So summary typically is a snapshot of the entire profile. So if I was this particular person, again, these are very contextual questions, so I don't know her. I'm just guessing from two different perspectives. So scenario number one is this person who has asked this question has a job A, and the job A and public speaking are not connected to each other. In that case, it's a little tricky question. But if the job of this person is directly connected to public speaking, then I would make it a little bit differently. So I'll take both the scenarios. Many of the people actually have two jobs. One is they work in a company and that job is just to pay the bills and EMI. And secondly, they have this weekend hobbies and passion, and one of them could be public speaking. So in that case, I would probably not put my public speaking strengths as the first paragraph because my day job is very different. So that profile will change accordingly. So what I would do is I would probably write a paragraph which is what I am doing in my office, which is the problem I'm trying to solve. And besides this, I also do this public speaking and I have done so many lectures and here's what I'm doing about it. I think that could be one strategy. But if the person's public speaking and the job are connected, like they are a marketing person or they're an events person or even a teacher or a professor, then I think the first paragraph, which is a story about how public speaking is helping them in their job, can be a very good idea. In fact, I would encourage that to happen any which ways, that stories are the most genuine forms of persuasion. In fact, I did a webinar with NASCOM last month, and I believe that we need to do more stories. So the answer to this person's question is try and putting your story in the beginning and see if you get more audience likes and connects. If not, then go back to strategy number two, which is blend in with your job and remove that. So it's an iterative learning process.
Our third question is how do I introduce about the company, especially if the company is a startup? Also, by providing less details, will I be in a better position for diverse networking events?
Again, so these are different questions. I'll first take the first question and then we'll go to the networking part. I think this question is very powerful. See, at the whole point of networking is you want to meet like-minded people so that you can learn from them, do business with them. It helps you in your professional life. But what I think you should also start looking at in networking is the whole idea of what you are giving to the other person. So LinkedIn profile is not just about me also. It's also about what can I do for you. So if you're an entrepreneur or if you have a startup, I think you must look at how your startup is really going to help the world or help the person who's reading that profile. Many times we become very geeky in our products and we just talk about our products, but that's not the intention. The intention is I think you should look at what kind of a new world you'll create with your startup. And this is where, if you reflect on some of these stories of entrepreneurs around the world, they have very simple problem statements that, okay, I'm just trying to see if I can create a more simpler uh, way to have customers buy, you know, shopping things like even a curd and eggs. And if you can bring down your levels of communication to that simplicity, that here is a problem I see and here is what I'm going to solve it, the chances of networking become more, because then you are giving something to the world. And if that's not the case, then I think the audience will tend to go away from you. Like, many of the LinkedIn profiles have this designation called professional networker. And I don't know what that designation means. Are you networking for the sake of networking, or are you really going to give me something with your expertise? So I would request you to think of networking as not just taking something from someone, but also giving something to someone. That here is what I can do for you if I network with you. I can probably help you with so many forums. I can help you with so many investors. I can help you with so many areas of work. And then people love to network with you. So that was the networking question. Now coming back to the first one, which is entrepreneur profile. An entrepreneur profile is by far the most challenging, because only you know what you're doing. Nobody else does. You also have an idea which is sometimes very secret. So you have to probably be a little bit careful on what you're putting out there, but don't hesitate in saying something which gives the person a knowledge about your expertise and what kind of a company you're working for. For example, at least in your profiles, write the sector you belong to. Sometimes we assume that the world knows everything, but that's not true. So let's say I'm an entrepreneur who works on a car. So in my profile, I'll actually put a sentence that says, I am an entrepreneur in the automotive sector. So that clearly now positions my mind in the automotive sector. Or if I'm an entrepreneur who's into, let's say, warehousing and logistic, then I'll say that I'm an entrepreneur who's into the supply chain sector, logistical sector, operations sector. So there are these buzzwords I would request you to put in, so that the reader is very clear as to where you are belonging, and then the right kind of people come in and network with.
Our next question is, given that tags describe what one is good at,
Hmm.
a lot of people have too many tags. So
Yeah.
how would you decide on tags?
So this is a very common problem. What I've seen most of us doing is we take a laundry list of all the sellable tags, Java. Nowadays, AI is the buzzword, machine learning, deep learning, MBA, and we just pack it in the profile, and that's such a wrong approach, because it really makes the whole profile very incoherent. And what a good benchmark is that even in academics, when you publish a paper or when you write a book, the suggestion from the publisher is that have 3 to 5 tags, not more than that, because it helps narrow down the search on googlescholar.com or any other academic search engines. So we have to, it's called prioritizing your life, that what are the top 3 or 5 tags that you want to know, because that's the physical limitation, that you should not go more than that. And I think it's not that hard, that once you make up your mind that I cannot use more than 3 tags, the answer is very clear. The problem is that most of the candidates are probably in the fear psychosis area, that they are so stressed out because of this whole job search thing, that they feel that we will put more and more keywords so that when somebody is searching, we'll get found. And it does work. I mean, I've seen many of these young recruiters. Many times they shortlist candidates not because of their LinkedIn profile, but because of some keywords in their profile. So I think this is where the industry is also not doing what is the right thing to do. And the candidates are just playing a game to fulfill those recruitment conditions that if you come in the search, then job one is done and then we'll worry about the other things later. In fact, I've seen many recruiting companies sit down with candidates and force fitting tags in their profiles that, okay, put this also so that you get this kind of a job or somebody will search you. I think this is about self-control and self-discipline and ethical thinking, and many of us should sometimes sit down and think what is the right thing to do, that we are looking for a particular job and let's do a good job of getting that job rather than spreading yourself too thin and adding 20 words in that resume that nobody understands. So my request is no more than 3 or 5 tags in your resume.
We'll be taking 2 more questions. The next question is, if you aren't looking for change, how does it justify spending time on being creative on LinkedIn? And how do contents like trustworthiness and job enrichment that profile holders seek can be mentioned in the story?
That's a great question. Not everybody is looking for a job, but I think we can use LinkedIn as an awesome tool to network and become popular. So you don't need a job, but you can create followers who are reading about you, who are learning something from you, you are inspiring them to do something else. Let's take the example of a person who has started a company, has done fairly well for himself. He's really not looking for a job. Or even a person who has worked for 20, 25 years, he also doesn't need a job. So these are people who can actually use LinkedIn to reach out to a wide variety of audiences and connect with them, learn from them. And this is where the LinkedIn publishing tool is very important, that they can express themselves. I think the beauty of LinkedIn publishing is it's a glorified blog, which is quite optimized so that people on LinkedIn are able to read you. And you do network and meet some very interesting people who read about you, comment on you. So it's not just job. I think LinkedIn can help in a tremendous amount of brand building for your particular case. And this is where if you see Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, he's doing an amazing job. So Satya Nadella writes a blog which is read by thousands and millions of people. In fact, if you look at many of these blogs, they are now doing very well. I mean, Nadella doesn't need a job. He's the CEO of Microsoft, chairman of Microsoft, and so do Bill Gates and Melinda Gates and many more such people. And the answer is that LinkedIn is not just for jobs, it's about knowing people, increasing your work. And all of these people are very passionate about the vision they have for this world, and their words on LinkedIn and their profiles do spread that. And many people look up to them for inspiration. So I would I would probably request everyone to use LinkedIn not just for jobs. I mean, I don't use LinkedIn for a job. I left the corporate world 10 years ago, and my intention of using LinkedIn is to promote what I work on, which is communication. And I write a lot on communication. I blog a lot about things that I see around me. And I try my best to practice what I preach, which is they're all connected towards the problem I'm trying to solve, which is education. So try and use LinkedIn as a platform to reach out to people. That's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is that you're trustworthy, and the other elements of profile will come with your track record. And I think this is where instead of you writing what a great person you are, if your recommendations write about them, and if you have the words who and who recommending you that you're a very trustworthy and good person, I think that's very important. So the proof of the pudding is in eating it, and you should not probably say how trustworthy you are, but your clients and your stakeholders and the people who work with you should do that. And the recommendation area of LinkedIn, I find many people don't utilize it very well, but it's a great way of letting the world know what about your trustworthiness and your track record is.
Thank you so much, Professor. Our last question is, what is the recommendation on premium versus a regular profile? And is there any opportunity for review and recommendation for changes in my profile? If yes, who can help you?
Okay. The first one is an easy one. I can tell you that I am not on the premium LinkedIn. I'm just on the regular one because you have to pay some money to become a premium networker. Uh, though I encourage you to do it because if you're a recruiter, it does open up features which allow you to do search a little bit more powerfully. But I haven't been able to invest that kind of a time, so I have taken a basic LinkedIn basic membership. The premium version is extremely powerful if you are looking out for candidates, and it also has some other features which can be utilized very well. The second is I'm also told that LinkedIn is nowadays no more just a professional networker. It has also become a resource for knowledge, and they acquired a company called lynda.com, which was a huge repository of small videos. I think it was acquired for $1.5 billion few years ago. And I think when you take this premium version, you get lots of tools and techniques on Lynda that I think on basic version you don't get. Plus, you also get a lot of features that basic people don't get. So please, if you have the money to invest, please become a premium member. The second is any if they can send their profile, who would review it. My immediate answer is I would have loved to review it. It's just that I don't have the time. But I still encourage you to send me a note on my LinkedIn. I, if I do catch some time, I'll be happy to take a look and give you a very quick and dirty feedback, though I don't commit on a timeline on when I do that. Always happy to help my fellow listeners and my students in whatever way I can.
Thank you so much, Professor Rakesh, for giving us your time. Hope we've managed to answer some of your questions. But I'd quickly just take this opportunity to thank all of you for being present here and for your participation and questions. Uh, Professor Rakesh, thank you so much for enlightening us on LinkedIn, and I hope some of your profiles will be benefited from it. Please let us know your suggestions and feedbacks or comments in the email. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Anushi, and thank you everyone for joining. Bye-bye. I told the IT guys B block and he's coming and telling me B block, B block. And I told him B block, like B for Denmark. I told him. Finally, it's happened in time. The next speaker is, I think, not from that.
think that's the good thing. Zoom, a lot of people have not used. And Zoom, the one who's managing it, like I'm sitting right now, I have to manually move people. Yeah. So if someone gets a call while they're on the phone or something, then the presenter and the host can hear the phone. So Zoom, there are problems with it. What I've heard. Yeah, Zoom. That's why I don't know if the quality which should have input. People are also using.